All right. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon here on the East Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, as you well know. And on this episode of Movers and Shakers, as you saw in the promo, I do have a special guest. So give me a moment while I introduce them on, okay? One moment. All right. I want to introduce writer director Honey Lauren. How you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for having me today.
Of course, of course.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
so talk to me, honey. Can you tell me Wives of the Skies? Talk to me about this film. In doing a little research about how all of this came together, can you talk a bit about the genesis of getting this project together? Because it's a fascinating story of how you got the inspiration for doing this film.
This film. Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me and talking about Wise of the Skies. Yeah. This film, I wrote it a few years ago. The script, and it was a finalist or semi-finalist at Slam Dance competition for the screenplay, and with that, I had an opportunity to make it, but I held off for a couple of years because like I'm not sure I want to do this right away. And the actual like the seed where the idea came from for this film was it was such a crazy story. But somebody sent me these stewardess outfits from on eBay. There were these vintage 1965 stewardess outfits, and they were highly collectible. They were uh, like a size 2, all of them, crazy small, highly collectible. They were being bought and sold for a huge amount of money on eBay, and they were all being bought and sold by men. And I was like, there's some kind of crazy fetish thing going on here that intrigued me. So I did my research into aviation and the history of stewardesses and the clothing, their different outfits over decades, and the story fascinated me. Of course, Wives of the Skies, there's only a piece of that element in this film, but that was, I would say, the seed of inspiration for for making this movie.
Definitely, definitely, and watching the film, it's fascinating to see the duality that's happening. On the surface, you have what's happening with the stewardesses themselves, and I would say kind of in terms of describing it, almost like the Stepford Wives ish kind of quality that you are that's coming across. However, there is a also a malleability with the male characters as well. So can you talk a bit about kind of that switch that's happening, even though on the surface it may seem like there is a power that's happening in one direction. There's in fact a power switch that's happening in the other direction as well.
Absolutely, well put. I would say that um, these are good girls drawn bad. I mean, they're beautiful women, and right away when we look at them and their profession and how what they had to do in order to have these jobs in 1965, being a stewardess, these sexy skies, uh, one would automatically assume that they are with something other than necessarily they were. So that's what's happened here with these women, and a lot has been projected onto them, obviously. And of course, we find out something completely different about them. They're the male characters as well. First of all, I got to just shout out to the cast. Drew Brandon Jones, who played Derek, this photojournalist in 1965, who finds himself at his stewardess hotel and decides to photograph them for his documentary. He's so amazing. I mean, he really brought to life what I had in mind when I wrote it. And the two stewardesses, Rachel Alec and Madison Bullock, who was also a producer on it, they were tremendous. And of course, Sebastian Fernandez, I had to shout him out, Kevin, maybe the hardest part in the film, really. because he was all face. So with that, but regarding like the unfolding of the characters, Drew's character, the way he played it was so pristine because he was he was swarmy enough that we knew where his mind was at with these ladies, but not so bad that we didn't like him. We always liked him. And of course, so as it unfolds at the end and what happens between him and Fran, I believe it. You know, I see that these two, that he would fall in love with her, and that she would be open to this relationship with him. And I mean, I find this whole film to be sort of an allegory for women in society, and I have to say that working with these actors, the way the nuance that they brought to each part really had this unfold to be so like perfectly executed. So I felt very lucky to have these actors.
Definitely, definitely, and to comment further on what you were talking about the allegory that you have at play here. Can you? And I'm sure it wasn't, intentional. There's no way that you could have possibly known in terms of the environment that we're in now, how fitting it is with everything that we're dealing with diversity and all types of issues that you're having this film play now.
Well, yeah, I mean, timing is crucial here. I felt very lucky that this is still an issue, the whole Me Too movement. This has been something that's always been an issue from way back and continues today. I do have to tell you something, just that, and this is just something that happened after I wrote the film, right before we were starting to shoot. I did some research, and I had seen this book, Coffee, Tea, or Me, which was a randy little tell-all book by these stewardesses in the 60s, not unlike with these stewardesses in terms of in the same era. And they became famous for this book with this tell-all about their wild escapades. And people went for it. It was a bestseller. These two stewardesses became like the it girls. They quit their jobs. They traveled the world to promote this film. Their book, Coffee, Tea, or Me. And it really helped the airline industry during that time. People would, men would fly thinking they'd get laid. And women were terrified to have their husbands fly because they didn't want these stewardesses to snatch them. So these wives of the skies. So I thought to myself, look, I'm reading it and it's just read so unauthentic to me as I read it. I'm like, just excerpts from the book. I'm like, this sounds like a male fantasy. I don't believe any of this. And I put it down, and then I researched it again, and it turns out that the whole thing was a hoax put on by the airlines industry. A man wrote the book in the 60s. It came out like in the 90s that the whole thing was a hoax and that he wrote it, and these women were, obviously didn't. And there you have it. So it was and the airlines paid the PR people to do it. And this gentleman went on to be a big writer for episodic television. He passed away, I think, in the 90s as well. But anyway, I thought that was hilarious. And I thought, well, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's all about projection about women. It's not at all real. So.
Gotcha. And with this film, it's a film that is relatively succinct in terms of how long it runs. Is there a plan to perhaps extend it to a full-length feature? And if so, are you able to comment on it perhaps?
You're so funny. Just yesterday, somebody asked me that as well, and I'm really glad you asked that. I have a feature script for it. So I think given the attention this film's gotten, it's been so well received, and I would feel very compelled to make the feature now. And, sometimes this was a short unto itself, and sometimes you make a short and that's what it is. And sometimes you could say, well, I could see this turning it into a feature for sure. And this one, I'm ready to go with it if it should happen.
Great. And before I was gonna say, before I let you go, the other thing I wanted to comment on that was very striking with the film, and I'm sure plenty of folks comment on this, is just the aesthetic itself of the setting, and even with how you capture not just the credits, but at least even the color palette and all those things. So can you talk a bit about the how whether it was challenging in trying to capture that decade
Yeah.
with the aesthetic that you were using, and how you were able to accomplish it?
Yeah, that's a great question because that was a definite anxiety going into it. You want it to look as authentic as possible. It takes place in 1965. I got very lucky. We lucked out in terms of wardrobe. Uh, Drew's character, those were his clothes. I might have bought him one sweater. But that's who he is. You know, we worked his hair with his little curl, but that's him. He's so great, such a great dresser, so great looking. And the other, in terms of the other costuming, that took some work. Obviously, somebody had to make the outfits for the stewardesses, and Stephanie Skull, she was fantastic. And the rest I got through something through China, different places. But the aesthetic of the actual look of the film, that I have to give credit to. You know, we got very lucky in terms of the location. That was an Airbnb, and it was out in the valley somewhere out in California, and it had like two lavender couches. You know, in those days, 1965, monochromatic rooms were very, very popular. So I saw this, I'm like, thanks to Madison, and I was like, we need to get this. We got it for almost no money. And we created, I may have like pulled out a couch and put in two purple chairs, whatever, but we created the art design with Brian Keith Davis, and the look of it looks so authentic. And Davey, the cinematographer, who's so talented, he was also the editor and color correct. And so he worked with the color correct on the 16 film, and to make it look like old film footage. Did a magnificent job. I mean, he's so talented. So we were able to capture the film look, and again, we got lucky with all the locations. And it took some work. It took months of preparation, really, to get it to look like that. But doing a period piece in 1965, I thought was going to be kind of hell. It wasn't. I mean, even though it was 100 years ago, it was not that long ago. You can still go to Goodwill and find these incredible things. Every prop, we got was either from Goodwill or from my mother. Like those were her dishes and things like that. Some of the sculptures on the wall, all that stuff. So, yeah, it took like 3 months work to put that together, but in the end, it was worth all that. Thankfully.
Awesome stuff. Well, honey, before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Sure. Yeah. So, Honey Lauren on Facebook, and also Honey Gay at Twitter and Instagram, Honey Lauren, and Wise to the Skies, of course, is Instagram as well, and Facebook too. And this film will be on Prime September 29th. So.
All right, awesome. Well, there you guys have it. Again, thank you so much, Honey Lauren, writer and director of Wives of the Skies, coming on talking about the film. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, as you well know, and you can find us on Facebook, which you're watching now. However, you can find us also on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD, on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. Of course, you can find me at Brandon Troy ENT on Twitter and Brandon Troy _ENT on Instagram. Thank you guys for watching. Be safe out there. And till next time, see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.